And rolling.
Okay. So what's up? Just looking over the pages. Ian got them via email. We put them together, and I just wanted to give you just a few critiques, as we've kind of started to do, and I think this is possibly a good way to keep it going. So, just looking over the Doberman page first, a lot of things that I like about it. This first panel is really, I can sense that emotion. It's really dark. Ian and I were both talking about how kind of imposing and kind of almost scary this is. And there's a lot of thought going on here, and like you can just, without any text alone, you can just spend, a ton of time just thinking about what it is that he's thinking, what's he considering, and you've put a lot of thought into that panel. I really like it. Again, there's a lot of things I like about this second panel, and I think that's really good. This third panel I think is very sharp. It stands out, tells the story very well, and the last panel again conveys your message pretty easily. And I was kind of a fan of it, and I'm liking that I'm seeing more here. And again, you kind of keep that lightheartedness there with the chair and trying to climb up there. So I mean, it's really good. Again, some of the positives. Again, this panel is really good. I like the detail work in the laces, the fact that kind of part of the foot is cropped off. That it's really zoomed in kind of look. The tension that you feel in the hands, a lot pulled off with very simple stuff. I would have liked to see a little bit more, maybe some shadow work here under the laces, just to give that impression of the light, because you've got a pretty strong light source here, and you've got a cat right here, and so maybe just a little bit more playing with the shadows. But I think great hand. I think great shot. Really nice, tight, clean shot. Starting up here, again, great emotion in the face. You've really developed kind of a style for this character. One thing I will say though, and that is watch the thumb work here. If that is his right hand and he's holding something, there's that curve to the thumb, okay, or that angle. And so he's probably not going to be cradling something like that with his thumb straight out. If this is, again, if this is your first, connection here to your metacarpal, that's kind of just very straightforward. If that's his left hand, that's the pinky, it feels a bit oversized. So it's kind of hard to tell which this is. Again, if this was the thumb, I would have liked to have seen it just wrap up here. So if this is the first knuckle, if this is the thumb, as I think it is, having it had it curve up here, I think would have also given a little bit more weight to it and made it feel like you were holding this round object. Really, that's my only complaint for this first panel. I think it looks really good. The strong light source, being cast over here, really giving the weight of the panel to the right, leaving a lot of that negative space over there is really good composition. Even though you centered this, you really made a better composition with that shadow. And the fact that it's centered kind of really focuses the reader's attention there. So I think a great panel there. The other complaint I'm going to have with this second panel, and I think your proportions are getting a little bit better, which you did mention about the size of the head compared to the torso is better. We can continue to elongate it, and I think your target area at this point is here, from about the rib cage to the groin. Possibly again elongate that a little bit more. Okay, you could even broaden the shoulders a tiny bit more, but I think the shoulder width here is good. You've got 3 heads wide, which is which is awesome. What we're going for. The top of the head to this groin here, in Bahama degrees, is about 4 heads high. So again, if we're going for that, this is a pretty good indicator. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So probably your groin is going to end up about here. So again, much better than recently, but you can even push that a little bit more. And I know it's out of your comfort zone because that's not the proportions that you're used to working in, but I think once you really start to push the envelope and get to those more traditional heroic proportions, you'll start to see the weight of your characters increase and they'll really become much more imposing. The other part is this arm, pretty good size, but what happens is in relationship, and that's what proportions are all about, relationships, it's a little big. Because again, with fingers extended, the tip of the finger should end up about mid-thigh. with the proportion you got going on right here, mid thigh ends up at about this point. All right, so right about where this wrinkle kicks in. If we swing that arm down, and again, I'll take this, okay, and swing it down here, tips of your fingers are going to end up right around where your knee is. So that's a little too long. The arm is a little large. If you would increase this size a little bit more and decrease the width of the arm, especially in the forearm, I think, you know, it would have been a little bit better proportion. You know, he's quite built, we get that, but watch the proportions here along the wrist area. You still want to narrow here and avoid that Popeye effect. You know, I think the musculature, I think a lot of the line work that you're doing, a lot of the cursive, that thick and thin, I think it's coming along very well. A lot of your shadows are, you know, are coming along really good. You're conveying a lot in your story. I'm really happy with it. I mean, here I'm just kind of like nitpicking with some things, but those are the things that I think are going to push your work to the next level. Again, if we're going to get, again, you know, close to those details, be careful with certain things. And again, these are just things that, for example, if you go to an editor, they're going to point out as well. So, again, not trying to, like, you know, put you down, hammer, because I'm not, because I'm really liking this page. And the more that you do, the happier I'm getting, and I'll get more into that with pros and cons. But if this is a straight-on shot, which it appears to be, this doorknob, okay, if you look right across, ends up right about, you know, rib cage area here, which means if he's reaching for it, he's reaching straight ahead. We don't. Doorknobs are generally about waist high, okay? So for him, somewhere around here. So that doorknob should actually be somewhere down here. Okay, and again, that's not something you think of right away, but when you're laying it out and you've got it all sketched out, those are things that you've got to go, okay, you know, these relationships you got to see, okay, and those minor details. I mean, where door handles go, you know, how big a car window is, how big a car tire is, you know, all these little things that, you know, the thickness of a windowsill or a table, the height of a chair, those little minute things, which may seem inconsequential, you know, are really things that editors will pick up on, because the better you get at those, the more realistic that your drawings are looking, the more believable it is. Subconsciously, the less distracting for a reader, because subconsciously sometimes things like this will kind of stand out, and you're like, what? That looks a little odd. I wonder what it is. And they may not, you know, the normal untrained eye may not notice what it is right away. But an editor will surely say that, you know, in something like a review or whatever. Okay. You know, and as for this last panel here, I'm liking it. I think that the Doberman costume grows on me even more. Every time I see it, it grows on me even more. I think it's a very fun, really fun costume. Again, you have to be careful, because I know it is a motorcycle helmet. I know it's a little bit bigger. But again, that torso relationship, making sure that, you know, when you're laying out your figure, you're really thinking, you know, 7.5 to 8.5 heads high. You know, 8.5 is the traditional American kind of superhero proportion. You know, if you read How to Draw the Marvel Way, which I'm sure you have, that's what they're going to say. This one here appears to be more, to me, like a 6.5, possibly even a 7. But again, that's something you continue to work on. This leg here, awesome. I'm loving it. I'm loving the weight of it in relationship to the rest of the figure. The proportions from, you know, groin to knee to foot, spot on. I'm liking the lighting from behind. There's a lot of things I'm really liking about this. I think, you know, you could only push this to the next level, you know, make it better by working on that torso, making it bigger. And again, I know you're usually used to working more towards more natural proportions, but in an illustration like this, we've got to push it and make it more dynamic, because that's what you're going for with a character like this. You want him to be, you know, imposing, above and beyond, you know, super heroic. You want him to send that message without even saying a word. And the costume does a lot of it. The body language does a lot of it, but he's got to have that kind of heroic stance and size. Overall, again, really happy with this page. Really happy with the way that Doberman is progressing, and your art is progressing. Your inking is getting better. One thing I will say too, though, be careful. If Ian, you can zoom in a little bit here, and I'll try to make it bigger. These smaller lines in the background to show texture on the walls and stuff like that, whether it's the cracks and stuff like that. Be careful, because the thinner the line that you make it, when you got to remember, when the person is reading it and it's scanned, everything like that, sometimes those very fine, minute lines kind of get lost and become kind of crumbly. So be careful. I'm not saying go extra thick with them, but be careful, because you can see here, like, even as far as I can zoom in with this, it's a little like light and hard to see. So when someone is looking at it as a webcomic like this, they kind of get lost, become almost pixelated or dotted, and so that's kind of rough. The line weight that you have here on the trim for the door is about a pretty good thickness. A little bit thinner is okay, but when you start to go as thin as you've gone on a few of these, it's a little lost. And I know you're going for like the cracks and stuff like that in the background, and that's fine. But just be careful, because here in the door we lose it. For the background here, I don't mind it as much, but here it's a little distracting because I've lost that weight of the trim on the door. Okay. Otherwise, awesome page. Okay.